One student's homework nearly exposed a skyscraper's hidden weakness. Not a crack in glass, not a failing foundation, not some visible engineering disaster. A tiny structural change. Welded joints became bolted joints, and that change almost changed New York's skyline forever. This was Citicorp Center, completed in the late 1970s, a $195 million symbol of American engineering confidence. From the street, it looked calm, sharp, balanced, untouchable. But inside its steel skeleton, something was waiting. A weakness so quiet, almost nobody could see it. Not the people walking below, not the workers inside, not even the city surrounding it every single day. The threat was not fire. It was not an earthquake. It was wind, but not ordinary wind hitting the tower head-on. The real danger came from quartering wind. Wind striking the building diagonally, like a flank attack. And that attack could find the tower's weakest joints. Think about that for a second. This giant building did not fear height alone. It feared direction. It feared the angle of pressure. It feared how force moved through hidden steel. William LeMessurier had designed a brilliant structural system. The tower stood as a landmark of engineering ambition. But then a student asked a simple question, a question that should have been routine. Instead, it opened the entire case again. Because once LeMessurier checked the numbers, the story changed. The tower was not just a finished building anymore. It became a live engineering emergency, a huge steel body with vulnerable wrists. Every brace, column, and joint became part of the defense, and the wind became the attacker. So how could a celebrated skyscraper reach this point? How could one construction change threaten an entire tower? To understand that, we have to open the structure itself. Start with how this tower stood. Because Citicorp Center was not ordinary vertical mass. It did not behave like a simple box. It was a giant body raised above constraints. Its strength had to travel through hidden paths. From the sidewalk, that looked elegant. Inside the frame, it was much more delicate. Every load needed a planned escape route. Every force needed somewhere safe to go. That is how skyscrapers survive. They do not defeat force. They redirect it, they catch it, divide it, and drain it downward. But this tower had a stranger problem. Its structural body did not stand like most towers. The weight above needed special support below. So the building depended on a carefully organized steel system. Think of it like a suspended athlete. Strong, balanced, and impressive. But only if every joint holds perfectly. That is the first layer. The tower was not weak because it was tall. It was vulnerable because it was unusual. And unusual structures demand unusual discipline. Now add wind. Wind seems simple from the ground. Feels like air moving past your face. But to a skyscraper, wind is pressure. It pushes, twists, vibrates, and searches for weakness. A tower does not experience wind as one single shove. It feels thousands of small attacks across its surface. Some push the glass. Some pull around corners. Some create suction behind the building. And all those forces enter the steel frame. Then they move through the hidden skeleton. If the frame is strong, the attack gets absorbed. If one path is weak, pressure starts concentrating there. That is when wind becomes dangerous. But the most important detail was the angle. A head-on wind is obvious. Engineers expect it. They design for it. They know where the pressure should go. But quartering wind is different. It hits the building diagonally. It does not respect the front of the tower. It cuts across the body from the corner, like a flank attack. And that changes the battlefield completely. The load no longer travels through the expected route. It starts activating different braces, different joints, different lines of resistance. This is where the problem became unsettling. The building did not need to face impossible wind. It needed the wrong wind from the wrong direction. That direction could push force into vulnerable connections. Not everywhere, not randomly, into specific joints, the very places that had to transfer loads safely. So the tower's survival depended on its wrists, not just its bones. A skyscraper can have massive steel members. It can have impressive columns and braces. But if the connections fail, strength cannot move. The force gets trapped. The joint becomes the bottleneck. And a bottleneck can turn strength into stress. That is the second layer. The enemy was not just wind. It was wind direction. Now comes the third layer. The design and the construction were not identical. Somewhere between drawing and reality, something changed. Welded joints became bolted joints. At first, that sounds technical and boring. It was not. It changed how the skeleton handled pressure. A weld acts like a continuous grip. It locks two pieces into one stronger path. A bolted joint works differently. It can still be strong, but it must be calculated very carefully, especially when force arrives from unusual directions. In normal conditions, this might look acceptable. Under diagonal wind, the story changes. Those bolts had to carry the fight. They had to receive force, hold it, and pass it onward. If they could not, the whole defense changed. Not because steel vanished, Not because the tower lacked mass, but because the load could not move correctly. That is the frightening part. The danger was hidden in translation. The wind spoke through pressure. The frame answered through force paths. The joints had to translate that answer safely. If the joint was underbuilt, the message broke. Then pressure began looking for another route. One connection weakens. The next connection takes more force. Then the next one feels the added burden. It is not one dramatic failure at first. It is a chain of growing stress, a quiet mechanical domino. That is why this was so serious. The tower was not facing one obvious crack. It was facing a system-level question. Could the connections survive the hidden load path? Could the frame defend itself from a diagonal attack? Could bolted joints do what welded joints were expected to do? And nobody on the street could see any of this. People walked below the tower. Offices operated normally. The city moved around it like nothing was wrong. But inside the math, the building looked different. Its body had a possible weak point. Its joints had become suspects. And its most dangerous opponent was still invisible. That is when the students' question mattered. It was not dramatic at first. It was just a structural question, the kind engineers are supposed to answer. But sometimes a simple question opens a locked door. It forces the old assumptions back onto the table. That is what happened to William LeMessurier. He had to look again, not at the skyline, not at the prestige, not at the finished tower, at the numbers, at the joints, at the direction of wind. And once he did, the building changed meaning. It was no longer just a successful project. It was a live structure with a hidden test ahead. The first test was not public opinion. It was not architecture criticism. It was physics, and physics does not care about confidence. It only cares about load paths. So now the real question becomes sharper. How exactly could diagonal wind overload those joints? And what could engineers do once the tower was already built? The answer begins with direction, because wind is not just strength. Wind is geometry. It matters where it hits. It matters how it enters. It matters which path receives the load. This is the twist. Citicorp did not need the worst storm possible. It needed the wrong angle. A diagonal wind could do what direct wind could not. It could force pressure into hidden structural lanes. It could bypass the obvious defenses. It could attack the tower's steel body sideways. That is why this case became so unsettling. The problem was not height alone. It was not cost alone. It was not one dramatic design mistake. It was a very specific load path. The wind struck the surface. The surface pushed into the frame. The frame passed force into braces. The braces pushed force into the joints. Then the joints had to hold. That sounds simple. But skyscrapers survive through routing. They do not just resist force. They manage it. They take a massive invisible pressure field. Then they break it into controlled streams. Those streams travel through steel members. They move through columns, braces, and connections. Finally, they drain safely into the ground. That is the defense system. But every defense system has command points. In this tower, the joints were those command points. If the joints worked, the load moved safely. If they failed, the whole strategy changed. Now think about quartering wind. It hits the building from a corner that activates two faces at once. It pushes one side. It pulls another. It twists the frame. It creates force combinations that feel less obvious. So the tower is not just being shoved. It is being levered. It is being twisted. It is being tested through the corners. And that is where hidden assumptions become dangerous. Engineers can design for enormous forces, but they must know how those forces travel. If the path changes, the answer changes. If the joint type changes, the answer changes again. That is where the bolted connections mattered. Bolts were not automatically wrong. That is important. A bolted joint can be extremely strong, but it must match the real load. It must match the real direction. It must match the real force path. In this case, the concern was specific. The joints had been expected to behave differently. Welds would have acted like continuous steel grips. They would help lock members together. Bolts created a different kind of connection. They still held the members, but they concentrated responsibility into discrete points. Each bolt became a small defensive post. Each plate became a transfer station. Each connection became a question. Could it receive diagonal force safely? Could it pass that force onward? Could it do that during a major storm? This is the moment the tower becomes frightening. Not because every part is weak, but because strength depends on sequence. One joint does not work alone. It passes load to the next joint. That joint passes load to another member. That member sends force toward another support. So if one connection is under stress, pressure redistributes. Then neighboring connections feel more demand. Then the system starts asking more from every link. This is not instant chaos. It is quieter than that. It is mechanical accumulation, a slow concentration of hidden stress, a domino effect inside the skeleton. From the sidewalk, nothing changes. The glass still reflects the city. The offices still look normal. The tower still appears confident. But inside the calculation, pressure is gathering. The math sees what the eye cannot. It sees a diagonal attack line. It sees vulnerable joints. It sees a load path with no room for ego, and physics does not negotiate. It does not care who designed the building. It does not care how impressive it looks. It only asks one question. Can the path carry the load? When LeMessurier checked again, that question became unavoidable. The tower had to be treated differently. It was no longer just a completed project. It was a patient with a hidden injury. The steel was the skeleton. The joints were the wrists. The wind was the attacker. And the city had no idea. That created the next layer of pressure. What do you do with that knowledge? Do you announce the risk immediately? Do you trigger public alarm before repairs begin? Or do you move fast, quietly, and responsibly? This was not just an engineering problem anymore. It became an ethical problem. The building was already standing. People were already using it. The city was already moving around it. And a major storm was approaching. That added the clock. Every night mattered. Every joint mattered. Every repair had to close the gap. So the response became surgical. Not loud, not cinematic for the public. Surgical. Workers moved inside the structure at night. The tower became a giant operating room. The vulnerable joints became surgical sites. The repair strategy was direct. Strengthen the connections. Reinforce the load path. Give the structure the grip it needed. The new welds acted like added armor. They turned weak transfer points into stronger defenses. They helped the frame catch diagonal pressure. They helped the tower route force correctly again. And that is the beautiful engineering logic here. The fix was not mystical. It was not theatrical. It was about restoring the intended defense system. Wind enters, steel receives, braces transfer, joints hold, force drains away. That is the sequence. Break the sequence and danger grows. Restore the sequence and the tower fights back. This is how they trap the wind. Not by stopping the storm, not by changing the skyline, but by strengthening the hidden paths of force. They rebuilt confidence inside the skeleton. They turned the joints from suspects into defenders. And they did it while the city kept moving. That is why the story is so powerful. It shows how fragile strength can be. A skyscraper can look permanent. It can seem untouchable. It can dominate the skyline. But its survival depends on invisible discipline. One overlooked path can change everything. One question can reopen the case. One joint can become the battlefield. And in structural engineering, disaster does not always begin loudly. Sometimes it begins as a quiet mismatch. Force meets an assumption. A load finds a weak connection. Then the entire machine waits for the test. Here, the test was coming from the sky. The answer came from steel, night work, and responsibility. So by the time the repairs were done, the story changed. Citicorp was no longer just a famous tower. It became a lesson in hidden systems. Because the strongest buildings are not protected by appearance. They are protected by the parts nobody notices. And that is the final lesson of Citicorp Center. A skyscraper is not safe because it looks powerful. It is not safe because it costs millions. It is not safe because it dominates a skyline. It is safe because hidden systems do their job. Every brace matters. Every column matters. Every joint matters. The parts nobody sees carry the visible confidence. That is what makes this story so strange. Citicorp did not reveal danger through broken glass. It did not reveal danger through visible cracking. It revealed danger through a question. A student asked, an engineer checked, and the steel told a different story. Inside the tower, wind was not just weather. It was a moving test of every assumption. It searched the frame, it followed the load paths, it pushed against the hidden risks of the structure. And when those risks looked vulnerable, the response had to be precise. Quiet night work, reinforced connections, new strength added where the tower needed it most. Not at the tallest point, not at the most dramatic surface, but inside the joints holding the body together. That is why engineering is so unforgiving. The biggest failures can begin in tiny places. A changed connection, a misdirection, a load path nobody questions again. Friends, and sometimes one careful question prevents the entire machine from meeting its worst test unprepared. So Citicorp Center became more than a famous tower. It became a warning hidden inside a skyline. Strength is not appearance. Safety is not reputation. And a building only stands because countless small parts agree. If you want more original engineering stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the smallest detail carries the whole structure.